In the heart of the Middle East lies a nation that has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of religions, and the clash of civilizations for over 2.5 millennia. Iran, known to the ancient world as Persia, stands as one of history's most fascinating and misunderstood countries. From the mighty Persian Empire that once stretched from India to Greece, to the Islamic Republic that dominates headlines today, Iran's story is one of incredible transformation, cultural richness, and profound upheaval. But how did a nation that once epitomized tolerance and cultural diversity become a theocratic state where morality police patrol the streets? How did the land of Cyrus the Great, who authored the world's first Charter of Human Rights, evolve into a society where religious law governs every aspect of daily life? The answer lies in a complex tapestry of conquest, faith, foreign interference, and revolution that spans centuries. To understand modern Iran, we must journey back to ancient Persia, where one of history's greatest empires emerged from the Iranian plateau. The Persian Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in 550 BCE, was revolutionary not just in its size but in its approach to governance. Unlike other ancient empires that imposed their culture and religion on conquered peoples, the Persians practiced remarkable tolerance, allowing local customs and beliefs to flourish under their rule. The Persians were followers of Zoroastrianism, a religion that would profoundly influence the Abrahamic faiths that followed. Zoroaster, the prophet who founded this faith, introduced revolutionary concepts that seem remarkably modern today. The struggle between good and evil, free will, divine judgment, heaven and hell, and the worship of a single creator God. These ideas would later find their way into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, making Zoroastrianism one of history's most influential religions, despite its relatively small number of followers today. For over 1,000 years, various Persian dynasties ruled vast territories, creating a rich cultural legacy that celebrated poetry, art, and learning. The Persian language became the lingua franca of much of the Islamic world, and Persian poets like Rumi and Hafez would later achieve global recognition. This was a civilization that prized intellectual achievement and cultural sophistication, values that would endure even as political power shifted. Everything changed in the 7th century when Arab armies swept out of the Arabian Peninsula, carrying with them a new faith called Islam. The conquest of Persia was swift and decisive, bringing an end to the Sassanid Empire and introducing a religion that would fundamentally reshape Iranian society. However, the Islamic conquest of Iran was not merely a military victory, it was the beginning of a complex cultural synthesis that would define the region for centuries to come. Islam, meaning submission in Arabic, brought with it a comprehensive worldview that governed not just personal belief, but every aspect of social and political life. Unlike Christianity, which developed alongside secular Roman law, Islam emerged as both a religion and a legal system. The Quran, believed by Muslims to be the literal word of God, provided the foundation for Islamic law, known as Sharia. This legal framework covered everything from worship and personal conduct to commerce and criminal justice. The Islamic concept of commanding right and forbidding wrong became central to Muslim society. This principle, drawn directly from the Quran, obligated believers to ensure moral behavior within their communities. It wasn't merely a personal responsibility, but a collective duty that would later provide the theological foundation for institutions like Iran's modern morality police. While Islam quickly became the dominant religion in Iran, the story took a dramatic turn in 1501 with the rise of the Safavid dynasty. The Safavids made a decision that would forever alter Iran's place in the Islamic world. They declared Shia Islam the official state religion, enforcing it with remarkable severity. This was revolutionary. Shia Islam, which had developed around the belief that Ali, the Prophet Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, was his rightful successor, had been a persecuted minority sect throughout most of the Islamic world. The Safavids not only embraced Shi'ism, but imposed it on their subjects at the pain of death, requiring all Iranians to curse the early Sunni leaders. The transformation was profound and systematic. Shia clerics from across the Islamic world flocked to Iran, seeing an opportunity to create their ideal Islamic state. These religious scholars, known as the ulama, developed a symbiotic relationship with the Safavid rulers. The clerics provided religious legitimacy to the state, while the rulers elevated the ulama to positions of unprecedented power and social status. Under Safavid rule, the principle of taqlid, or religious imitation, was instituted. This meant that ordinary Shias were expected to follow the guidance of high-ranking clerics in all matters of religious law. The clerics, in turn, began to regulate virtually every aspect of human life, from clothing and diet to commerce and personal relationships. Official orders went out to close taverns, ban music and dancing, segregate the sexes, and enforce Islamic dress codes. The Safavid experiment created something new in Islamic history, a stable, unified Shia state where religious authority was deeply intertwined with political power. This model would lay the groundwork for what would eventually become the Islamic Republic of Iran, though that transformation was still centuries away. As the Islamic world grappled with the rise of European power in the 18th and 19th centuries, Iran faced a crisis that would define its modern history. The once mighty Persian Empire found itself technologically and militarily outmatched by European powers, particularly Britain and Russia, who began treating Iran as their personal playground. The Qajar dynasty, which ruled Iran from 1785 to 1925, presided over a period of national humiliation. Foreign powers carved up Iranian territory, controlled its resources, and manipulated its politics with impunity. The British established a monopoly over Iran's oil reserves, keeping the vast majority of profits for themselves while leaving Iran with a pittance. This experience of foreign exploitation would leave deep scars on the Iranian psyche and fuel a nationalism that continues to influence Iranian politics today. In response to these challenges, Iranian intellectuals and reformers looked to the West for inspiration. The Constitutional Revolution of 1906 represented a remarkable attempt to modernize Iran through democratic reform. This peaceful revolution established Iran's first constitution, created a parliament called the Majlis, and attempted to limit the power of the monarchy while protecting individual rights. However, these democratic aspirations were repeatedly frustrated by foreign interference. Britain and Russia, fearing the loss of their influence, actively worked to undermine Iran's constitutional government. The discovery of oil in Iran only intensified foreign meddling, as these resources became too valuable for outside powers to ignore. The failure of constitutional democracy paved the way for a different approach to modernization. In 1925, Reza Khan, a military officer, seized power and established the Pahlavi dynasty. Both he and his son, Mohammad Reza Shah, pursued a philosophy of secular nationalism, attempting to modernize Iran by force while suppressing both political opposition and religious influence. The Pahlavis viewed Iran's Islamic identity as an obstacle to progress. They implemented sweeping secular reforms, including banning the hijab, granting women the right to vote, and reducing the power of the clerical establishment. These policies created a modernized Iranian society that many in the West would recognize, with universities, a thriving film industry, contemporary music, and Western-style dress, particularly in urban areas. However, this modernization came at a tremendous cost. Both Pahlavi rulers governed as autocrats, using secret police to terrorize political opponents and suppress dissent. The benefits of Iran's oil wealth were concentrated among the elite, while ordinary Iranians, particularly the urban poor and rural populations, saw little improvement in their lives. The situation was further complicated by Iran's relationship with the United States. Initially, many Iranians viewed America as a potential ally that might help them escape British and Russian domination. However, this hope was shattered in 1953, when the CIA, working with British intelligence, orchestrated a coup that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh and installed the Shah as an absolute monarch. This coup, known as Operation Ajax, was motivated by Mossadegh's decision to nationalize Iran's oil industry, threatening Western economic interests. The success of the coup established the United States as the dominant foreign power in Iran, and the primary target of Iranian anti-imperialist sentiment. The memory of this intervention would haunt US-Iran relations for decades to come. By the 1970s, growing opposition to the Shah's authoritarian rule created a revolutionary situation. Critics accused the regime of being a puppet of Western powers and of abandoning Iran's Islamic identity in favor of foreign values. A term emerged to describe this perceived contamination: Westoxication, the idea that Iran had been poisoned by Western influence. At the forefront of this opposition stood Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a charismatic cleric who had been exiled by the Shah for his opposition to pro-American policies. From his exile in France, Khomeini developed a revolutionary ideology that would transform both Iran and Shia Islam. In his influential work, Islamic Government, Khomeini argued that Islamic societies must be governed by Islamic law and that this law should be interpreted and enforced by qualified religious scholars. This was a radical departure from traditional Shia theology, which held that legitimate Islamic government could only be established by the hidden imam, a messianic figure who would return at the end of times. Khomeini argued that in the absence of the imam, the religious scholars, particularly the most learned among them, had both the right and the duty to govern Islamic societies. Khomeini's message resonated with diverse groups of Iranians who shared little beyond their opposition to the Shah. Leftist students attracted by his anti-imperialist rhetoric, traditional bazaar merchants concerned about foreign economic penetration, and ordinary Iranians frustrated by corruption and repression all found something appealing in Khomeini's call for revolution. When the Shah fled Iran in January 1979, millions of Iranians poured into the streets to welcome Khomeini's return. However, the revolution's ultimate direction remained unclear. Various factions competed for power, including secular Democrats, leftist revolutionaries, and Islamic fundamentalists. For a brief moment, it seemed possible that Iran might establish a democratic government that balanced religious and secular elements. This possibility vanished when Iranian revolutionaries stormed the American embassy in November 1979, taking its staff hostage. Khomeini's decision to support this action, while popular with his revolutionary base, isolated Iran internationally and allowed him to consolidate power by eliminating more moderate voices within the revolutionary coalition. The Constitution of the Islamic Republic, ratified in 1979, created a unique system of government that combined democratic and theocratic elements. While Iranians could vote for presidents and parliament members, ultimate authority rested with the supreme leader, a position designed specifically for Khomeini. The supreme leader controls the military, intelligence services, and judiciary, while a body called the Guardian Council screens candidates for elected office and can veto legislation deemed incompatible with Islamic law. This system institutionalized the enforcement of Islamic morality on a scale unprecedented in Iranian history. The Constitution explicitly mandates that the government promote virtue and prohibit vice, using the same Quranic language that had justified moral regulation under the Safavids centuries earlier. However, the modern Iranian state possessed surveillance and enforcement capabilities that earlier dynasties could never have imagined. The establishment of the Islamic Republic brought dramatic changes to Iranian society. Political executions skyrocketed as the new regime eliminated those it deemed counter-revolutionary. Independent newspapers were closed, the education system was Islamicized, and militia groups enforced religious law in the streets. Women, who had gained significant rights under the Pahlavis, found themselves subject to new restrictions, including mandatory hijab wearing and limitations on their ability to work, travel, and participate in public life. These policies sparked a massive exodus of Iran's educated middle class, brain drain that continues to affect the country today. Those who remained faced a society where religious law governed personal behavior and political dissent was equated with heresy. The morality police, formerly known as the Gasht-e-Ershad, became the visible symbol of this new order, patrolling the streets to ensure compliance with Islamic dress codes and behavior. The Iran-Iraq War, 1980-1988, helped consolidate the new regime by rallying Iranians around the flag, but it also entrenched the system's authoritarian tendencies. The war's end brought new challenges as reformist politicians attempted to liberalize the system. only to be blocked by conservative forces loyal to the supreme leader. Today, more than 4 decades after the Islamic Revolution, Iran remains a nation caught between competing visions of its identity and future. The death of Mahsa Amini in police custody in 2022 sparked nationwide protests that revealed the depth of popular frustration with the current system, particularly among younger Iranians who have known only life under the Islamic Republic. These protests raised fundamental questions that have haunted Iran throughout its modern history. What is the proper relationship between religion and politics? Can Islamic societies embrace both faith and freedom? How can Iran honor its rich cultural heritage while adapting to the modern world? Is peaceful reform possible, or will change only come through another revolution? The story of how Iran became a theocracy is ultimately a story about the complex relationship between power, faith, and identity in the modern world. It demonstrates how historical grievances, foreign interference, and religious ideology can combine to create political systems that their own citizens may eventually reject. As Iran continues to grapple with these fundamental questions, its future remains as uncertain and fascinating as its remarkable past. From the tolerant empire of Cyrus the Great to the morality police of today, Iran's journey illustrates both the potential and the perils of attempting to create a perfect society based on religious principles. Whether Iran can find a path forward that honors both its Islamic faith and its people, its desire for freedom remains one of the most compelling questions of our time. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating history videos. Visit the channel for more.